This week, we welcome comedian, filmmaker, and author Jena Friedman.
I thought that the stories about my experience, my personal experiences, if I could have like universal themes attached to them, that maybe it would like resonate. And I don't want to be like a political pundit. I don't know if I'm going to get shit from some of the things I say on this podcast by your supporters. I hope they're still listening. I talk about cancel culture because it was like hard at the time to write a book about comedy and culture without talking about that kind of weird elephant in the room. But yeah, I mean, I hope that somebody who doesn't align with me politically will still appreciate what I'm saying in the book, because it just really is my own experiences. It's not, I don't have like a larger agenda.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join Phetasy.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at Phetasy.com. I'm with Jena Friedman, everybody. Welcome to Walk-Ins Welcome. I'm glad to have you and meet you. I feel like we've met, but maybe we just haven't. Maybe I just feel like I know you, but I think I've seen you. Maybe I just bumped into you in New York when I was with Adrienne Appalucci one night, and I think you were performing.
Adrienne.
I know, I love her. She's
cool.
She's just the most fearless.
Mm-hmm. She's so funny. I'm glad that I think people are there are these comedians, particularly female comedians, who've been in New York doing comedy for decades, and they're so funny. And I feel like only now people are kind of noticing, or in the past 5 years with social, just kind of people are noticing how funny. Liz Miele is another one.
Yes.
Just been doing it. Anyway.
How long have you been doing comedy?
Since 2005.
Wow.
And wow, to be so obscure. Having done it for
you're
so
not
long.
obscure though, I don't think. I feel like you're pretty well known. I feel like you're, at least in the comedy world, you're very well known. And I think
that's all I care about. That's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have this feeling of obscurity because I interview a lot of people, mainly men, for this true crime show that I did. And I made a meal out of one of them literally not knowing who I was at all or my name, even though he sat down to be on my show. And my name is like literally in the performance release that he signed to be on the show. And I was just like, do you like it was just, it's this whole thing, but it was like, what if somebody wanted to be as successful as Nancy Grace, because he was her producer, how would you advise them? And then he started kind of like, thinking about it and telling me. And then he's like, what's their name? And I was like, Jena Friedman. Do you know who that is? And he's like, I don't know. Maybe she should start with podcasting. So I think it maybe has given me this complex. And I'm like, wow, people do not. It's fine. It's great. It's actually great.
When I first had I had a podcast before this podcast with a comedian co-host, and we would have guests on to talk about relationship stuff and being single. I think you and I both have a history about writing for I wrote like relationship advice for Playboy, and that was a crazy time to be writing for Playboy. And so this was around the time I had that podcast, and this guy came on, and I did no research. I just had him on, did no research. And then he was really tall and he came on the podcast and I was like, wow, you should be in the NBA. And he was like, I was in the NBA. And he was so mad. And the rest of the interview was just like a disaster. It was early on in the podcasting career of mine, and I learned a lesson.
I love that. I think the interviews where, not like Between Two Ferns, where he like actively pretends to have no charisma with people, and it's very hilarious. But I think the interviews where people have zero charisma are so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, they're fun. I like the ones though too where it is just like two people bantering. My favorite interviews I do such a smattering of interviews with people, and my favorite are always with comedians because it does end up just talking about like the most random shit, and it's not. I don't have to feel like some kind of intellect or anything. And I do remember it was like the first time I ever did Rogan. He had just finished talking to Snowden. And then I walked in and they were still going. And I was in the green room and I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, why are you talking to me? And he was like, I was like, well, it's me, an idiot. And he was like, oh, thank God. Like it's a
That's
relief.
funny.
But it's a
Yeah.
nice break
Yeah. I
from
do
people
think,
who are intellectual.
or yeah, like government agitators. It is cool that I like with almost all comedians, there is this, I don't know if it's like a language or just a way where you can really one-on-one just talk to people. And I don't know, like that was one of the things during the pandemic I really missed, that I didn't even realize I missed, particularly when you live in New York. You're just like, you run into people all the time. Those tiny conversations before and after shows where you just get so real with these people you see maybe like twice a year.
Yeah.
And it's just this language of like, how are you doing? Oh, my wife left me, but like, and then, like you're just, it's cool. I love our community of
Yeah.
comedians.
I feel like I really miss it's one of the I have like a weird relationship to it because I feel like I was never built for the grind, and it's one of the things I've always worried about. Maybe if I lived in New York, I probably would have kept grinding more than I did in LA because the driving for like 4 or 5 minutes was just crushing me. And then once I started getting paid to write and do building an online audience, I was like, is this
Yeah.
time efficient at the moment?
LA is not a place to build a stand-up career or even really sustain it. It's hard. LA is a lot harder. New York, though, you're running around there. You're just like, that would be like my exercise. I would just like go to
Yeah.
shows, see friends, like be out in the world. It was just part of the kind of being out in New York anyway.
I wanted to ask you, you had, and this is completely just off topic, but I was thinking about it and laughing about it when I saw you posted on Twitter. You posted something about like letting your child cry it out. And there's this really funny Instagram meme that my sister sent me, and it's like it's kind of a veteran mom watching a new mom ask a question in like a community about it. It's like, oh, let's see how this goes. And that was exactly the feeling I had when you were like, hey, I'm thinking of letting my kid cry it out because I don't know what to do. I was like, I'll get the popcorn. Let's see how this goes.
I stopped tweeting, but I was a little, I mean, you're crazy because you're not
Crazy.
sleeping. So
Yeah.
I was on Twitter, and this is so dark, but my mom died when I was pregnant. I was like,
Oh God,
um,
I'm so
it
sorry.
was over 5 weeks. It was pancreatic cancer. It still feels surreal to talk about, but I think I was like leaning on Twitter because like I didn't have her to call. So I was just like,
I wish you
um,
had called me. I seriously was
aw.
gonna be like, I DM'd you. I was like, look, if you need
Oh,
any
you did? I mean, I got a lot of DMs from people, and I hope I responded, but I was just like, like,
I
that was
was such a
crazy.
I think we had our kids around I don't know how old your kid is, but I feel like they're like 3 months apart. Like, I think
Wow,
you were
October he was born.
okay, so a little more. She was born at basically the beginning of May. So, but yeah, they're
Wow.
very close in age. So when I saw you tweeting about that, I was like, "Oh my God, I feel for her. I've been in exactly this position and still wrestle with it, by the way." Still.
People, yeah, I mean, people were coming out of the woodwork to the point where, like, I was tweeting about breastfeeding mostly because I had and I know this is like so gross to talk about, but I didn't know until I was 3 months pregnant that it was like a 24-hour thing at first, that you're just like constantly breastfeeding. So you don't really sleep because if you do decide to breastfeed, which whatever, who cares? You don't need to. I actually wanted to do a podcast where I would like ask like Stephen Miller's mom if she breastfed it. Like I was just so curious about like, like with Ben Shapiro breastfed, sorry, like was Richard Spencer breastfed? Just because you want to know, like, why am I doing this? Do I need to breastfeed this kid? But I did it for immunity stuff, whatever. But it was so hard. And if it takes them like an hour to eat and you have to do it every 2 to 3 hours, you literally are not sleeping. So I was losing my mind and then tweeting about it. And then I had people being like, oh, I want to send you a breastfeeding sweater. I want to send you a weird bra with with a contraption that massage. And I'm like, I don't want to be a breastfeeding influencer. Like, I'm shutting this shit down now. And I haven't tweeted about it since.
Oh yeah, the sleeping one. I just wrote a piece about how nothing is, it's like the thing that everyone judges you by as a parent. And even when we first started walking her around the neighborhood in the early like days of her being alive, she was weeks old and people were like, "Are you sleeping yet?" It was the first question they asked. I'm like, "No, I'm not sleeping yet." And she had colic. So she
Yeah.
was for like 5 or 6 weeks. It was like I felt like I was the biggest failure in the entire, I got
Yeah.
emotional thinking about that time.
Yeah. He was
And,
the same way.
yeah, it was just, and then I didn't know what to do about the sleeping thing, and it's like there's so much information and it's so saturated, and every single thing is like, I had people DMing me and emailing me and telling me that I was traumatizing my daughter if I let her cry it out, and then there's lots of evidence that's like that's all bullshit, and it's like something that one person, like Gabor Mate made up from a loose study that is kind of not, it's just so, there's so, I said to my sister, she had kids really young. So she says she feels like a grandma now because her kids are on the way. She has 2 that are pretty much done and 1 with like 4 more years to go. And she's like, I was like, is it always been like this or is it just, and she's like, "No, it's the internet." She was like, "This is just social media and the internet. It was not like that." She was like, "When I was a mom, we had like pillows and all kinds of shit in their cribs and blankets. Now it's like."
Oh, right. Well, yeah, no, I had only you will appreciate this or moms, but Harvey Karp, the maker of
Yeah.
the snoo, slid into my
Yeah.
DMs because I was like, my baby doesn't like the snoo. And he slid into my DMs and he's like, have you tried tilting it? Like, here's a
Okay.
link. And I was like, get the fuck out of here, Harvey Karp. I even like trolled him at one point. He was like, I sent him a text back or something because it was so funny and nobody will find this funny except for other moms. But I had like a typo in something I wrote him back, and then I wrote back, sorry for the typo. I have my child and my crying child in my hand because he doesn't like the snoo. Just like so mad. So dumb.
Yeah, there's just so much. That's another piece that I'm writing right now is the like babies come with a lot of shit and it's all just about the registry and how overwhelmed. Well, I hate
So
shopping. It was so overwhelming. I basically paid my sister to do it for me and I just none of the stuff made sense because it's out of
yes.
context.
I still don't even know. I also, because of my mom thing, I just was like, I'm just gonna lean into my grief. Like, it was like I totally was grieving, but it was also like a good excuse to just tune out the registry stuff. My husband did
Yeah.
all of that. I didn't. The only thing I bought my son is a crocheted Metro card because it's so stupid. But I was like, I'm a New Yorker.
Y-
But everything else he has, I don't even know where he got it or what it is. It's
God,
all.
Jenna, that
It's
is so fucking hard. I don't know how you.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say that you were so lucky that you didn't that your mom died and you didn't have to do
No,
the
that's just
the baby registry stuff.
my OBGYN died when I was 5 weeks postpartum. Just random, shocking, like, and he was like this beloved
Oh my
OBGYN in
God.
LA and
I think I
and
heard about that because I had a friend who was also
everyone had
going to
him.
him and she's
Yeah.
like, he died.
Yeah, and that was like a shocking thing to
Yeah,
grieve, and
yeah.
then I can't even, that's like times a million. I
It's the
can't even
worst. It's
imagine
the
it.
worst. It just I can't talk about it too much because I will cry, but it's the worst thing ever. But at the same time, and this is also dark, but it's totally honest. Like I really wasn't sure that I wanted to have a kid. It was not, I was never somebody who was like, I don't want it or I do want it.
Yeah.
And my husband wanted it, and I was like about to be 40, and I didn't think it was going to happen because he smoked a
Yeah.
lot of pot, and I was 39. I'm like, go ahead and try. And then like right away we got pregnant, and I was like not sold on it. While I was pregnant, I was shooting a true crime show and a stand-up special, and I was like, this is gonna be good fodder for me. It's gonna make my shit funnier, which is such a horrible thing to think, but telling abortion jokes with a baby attached, like a fetus, whatever, is comedic. And
Yes.
so, but then when my mom got sick and it happened so quickly, that was like the first moment that I was like, I was so, it like, a switch like went on in my brain, and I was like, I feel so lucky that I have this little guy in the worst moment of my life.
Yeah.
And then so I just feel grateful. So I didn't get haven't apparently you can get postpartum starting at 9 months. Who knew? Huh? But I
I didn't
haven't
know this either.
I haven't gotten it yet, I think, because I had so much grief. But having a little cheery guy, it just kind of keeps her alive. And I don't know if I have postpartum psychosis, but now I'm just like, I've gone through the stages of grief, and now I'm just back to denial, and I like talk to her and pretend she's live.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like a crazy intense thing to go through when you're pregnant. That is
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. I am glad you had your husband doing your registry for you
Yeah, he was
because
great. He did it. He did everything. He was great.
yeah. And were you writing your book at the same time?
I finished the
Or was
book.
that done?
That was done.
Okay.
Have you written a book?
No, because I don't know
I
what my
could,
problem is.
no. It was something I wasn't able to do until like the Delta variant really helped me like take time off from being outside or like around people to write it. But yeah, I finished it. So my mom had always wanted me to write a book, and I just kind of like tuned it out. And I finished it, and I got to read her the whole Galleys copy, which is so artfully presented against my wall. And I was so pregnant. I had a mask on because it was when we still thought she would be able to get chemo, and I didn't want her to get COVID. And I read her the whole book in 2 days, trying not to cry. And when I finished, she said, "Are you going to do a book on tape?" And I was like, "That's the plan." And then she said, "Well, you should pay someone to help you on the performance." The book is about 15 years as a performer. And it was like, I laughed with her at the time. Like, I was just like, I love how like, and I didn't know she was dying, because I don't want to talk too much, but I'm talking about it so much right now. But it was like, I found out she was sick a day before I taped my stand-up special. And if I had known that she was going to die in 5 weeks, I don't think I would have been able to do it. I thought like worst case, it was going to be 2 years.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
life comes at you fast.
Yeah,
We
it
can
does.
move on. But I'm glad I got to I'm glad I got to read it to her. I'm glad she got to like I don't think I'm going to have another moment in my career where I have like literally a stand-up special, a television show, and a book all about to come out, and a baby. Like there's never going to be a moment where I have. So she got to, our relationship was the best it had ever been. She knew I would be okay. So I have to like kind of, I hate the G word. I hate the word gratitude because I live in LA, and I feel like that word has been bastardized. And it's
I thought you were going to say God.
What? Who's that? No, gratitude. But like, and I'm only also talking about it publicly because I had never experienced this, and it feels like jumping in a pool of freezing cold water, and you're just like, what? So I do think it is important to talk about it, just for other people. But like personally, being able to have the gratitude for like the time that I had with her, and also just yeah, and talking to friends who had gone through it. Those are the two things that really have like helped.
Yeah, there's that expression somebody once said to me, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. I feel like you're living proof that that's not true. You're like, no, it actually all happened exactly in one moment. So many life altering, worldview changing things to happen at once. And I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, you're probably still in like processing, and now everyone's on strike. It's so weird with LA. I came to LA in 2007, right as the last strike started. And then I left as like my time in LA was bookmarked by writers' strikes. It
Yeah.
seems so weirdly appropriate.
This one's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun to be on the picket line. It feels like a party, but also like the threats are existential, and they are in every industry. And a friend of mine likened our industry kind of to like an athlete union. Like as far as unions go, we are less vulnerable than I would say the teachers union or the nurses union. And we're out there, and I want to believe that no matter how this goes, that we're fighting for everyone. I think what's happening is happening in every single industry, and it's not even like technology is evolving, get with it, get used to it, because like you saw with Uber, which is not exactly the same analogy or like analogous to what's going on, but like they went into New York, they decimated the cab industry. Cab drivers used to be able to have a pretty good living, but then they replaced it with something where it's like a gig economy, but Uber itself isn't even necessarily making money. So there are these like disruptors, but the finances don't even necessarily add up to a profit. But then you have some CEOs and people at the top just kind of like looting, just taking money out of pre-existing, not even economies, I guess. And it
Yeah.
is, there's a term for it, vulture capitalism. But that's the other thing that I think is really interesting about this moment. You have these like whatever 8 to 12 studio executives, and their salaries are like in the, you know, like 20 to 40 million range, and they're not even making money for the companies that they're running. They're just literally taking a pre-existing industry that like many people could have comfortable middle class livings in, and just looting it for themselves and not even bringing their shareholders profit. So, and the tech is allowing them to do that. But
Yeah.
so yeah, so I really do believe in the strike and what we're trying to do. I don't know how it's going to go. I think if the DGA, and it looks like SAG is kind of coming into our corner, but if the DGA also does, I think we'll have a lot of power.
Yeah.
But it's still to be determined.
Yeah, it seems like I don't fully understand everything. It just seems like from my perspective as someone who's lived in LA for 15 years, you used to be able to make a living as like a middle class writer, but now the city itself has priced those people out, but the industry has priced those people out too. And it does seem like the writers are getting asked to do more and more drafts for essentially free, and not
Yeah.
getting the streaming thing is really
The
fucked.
streaming thing just means that you don't. So if you write a script, that's your intellectual property, but now with streaming, you don't get money when other people see it. And you're right, it is a convergence of two things. It's like the industry itself, it's changing to a point where just there's less money to go around by nature of design of like the kind of people at the top doing that and the technology allowing them to do that. But then on the other side of the coin, you have like the housing crisis where we were trying to buy a house before the pandemic. Uh, the, on this one house, there were 20 offers, 10 were all cash. It ended up going for 400 over asking price. And then whoever bought it put it back on the market as an Airbnb. So
Oh,
whoever
wow.
bought it wasn't even living in it. It could
Yeah.
have been a hedge fund. It might
Yeah.
not have even been a person.
Yeah.
Could have been somebody from another country coming in and buying it. Like, and that has to do with the lack of regulations. And I don't want to sound like a socialist. I totally believe in capitalism, but it needs to be like regulated so you don't have people scamming or exploiting labor.
Yeah, there's that situation that is occurring in so many. I see it in Joshua Tree. So many people moved in out of town and then also just got second rental properties from, and they were just renting them all. And everywhere you go, there's like, go back to LA, and everywhere in America you go, there's like, go back to California. It does seem like
Yeah.
this weird invasion of people. I'm part of this problem, moving from LA to Texas now. And I had family members who were probably, I think they left in like 2017. So they were way ahead of but people have been leaving with in the middle class with families for a long time from California just because they're getting priced out. And they said the same thing. They had 2 kids, and they said what we were saying once we had our one, which was, we'll never get ahead in this town ever.
I
There's
mean,
just,
this is the nature of cities, and I mean, like my ancestors moved for like this is just like the nature of like humans, you know, move and migrate because of certain things. But I also do think that there's like an outsized anger at individual like libtards or whatever, like people from LA moving, when in reality it's the system that is like, you know, it's like the not to get too into it, but what neoliberal economic policies that like both the Democrats and the Republicans are guilty of it. They're eroding the middle class. People aren't able to survive, and people are angry, so they're trying to scapegoat other people. When in reality, it's like we just need a system that actually gives a shit about people and that taxes billionaires and puts that money back into economies for people to have jobs and living wages.
So
Problem
yeah,
solved.
problem solved. Just like that. I'm familiar with it coming from very blue California, which is like a uniparty. But how does, and I'm this is just me being dumb. How does it occur with the like right Republicans where they're eating the middle? Like how do they destroy the middle class with their policies?
Well,
I
I
know it
mean, they're
well
not
with the
taxing. They're not taxing. They don't want taxes on billionaires, so they're not.
like all the
And the other thing so I did this piece at the Daily Show where we were like, I was a field producer there, and it was a really cool job, but it was really hard because like we were doing a piece on uh, minimum wage, how you should have like living wages, and you're talking to people who are really struggling. They're working like 5 jobs and like unable to support their families. And there's like this mythology that like the rich don't have to pay taxes and blah, blah, blah. But we don't realize that they actually are benefiting from a system. Like the term welfare queen is like really problematic, but like our piece, the joke was just that like Walmart, McDonald's, these companies themselves are the quote unquote welfare queens because they're the ones that are like exploiting a workforce. They're paying people so little that the people have to go on food stamps, and the people are able to go on food stamps because the government is paying for their food stamps, and they're taking advantage of like tax loopholes, and they're pretending that they like there's like this libertarian ethos where it's like I don't want to pay taxes, but it's like you drive on roads, you drink clean water, who pays for that? And I think that we have lost sight of the fact that like we live in a society, and when you live in a society, like there are things that you have to do so that like you don't have like roving bands of poor people, and so that you have like public utilities, and so that you have like electricity and all these kinds of things. And I'm not a socialist, I know I sound
yeah.
like one, but like I think we're so disconnected from other people, and we're this like individualist society. And so that piece is really incredible because we talked to this like free market capitalist guy, and Sam B was a correspondent, and it was really hard to be like, why, like the idea that like the markets determine wages is kind of a myth because it's not it's not like to the level of astrology that's like a joke. But Sam asked him a question. She was like, what type of person, if people are what they're worth, which is what he thought, this guy is like a multimillionaire hedge fund guy, describe to me somebody worth $2 an hour. And he said, I don't know the PC term for, and then he said the R word. But and so it's like, if that's your mindset, where you think people who are intellectually disabled are worth $2, and you want to live in a society where that is like that's where we live, like you're just an asshole. And that's like
Yeah.
really what it boils down to. And we were able to kind of just show like that free market thing is really just like it's like an asshole mentality. And then with the Republicans, not only are they doing that, but then they're also like legislating women's bodies. So it's like you're forcing people to give birth, and then you're not helping that. You're just like, it's just so subjugating. And I think that's by design. And so I do think that like, I don't want to get into like politics because
Yeah.
I honestly think that that really tunes people out. But I do think like there are more people on the left and the right who agree on baseline things. We don't want kids getting shot in schools. We want people to have control over their healthcare decisions. Like
Yeah.
the majority of it, but because of like the political moment that we're in and the way that
Which is fucked.
which is fucked, and people are making so much money. CNN, like
Yeah.
Fox, people are making so much money dividing us and making us angry that we're not able
Yeah.
to just like talk about the real things. And like I was just on a podcast, like left-leaning podcast, but we were talking about the culture wars, and the overall conclusion to that was like, these are really convenient things for us to continually talk about because they're hard to define, and they just make people angry, and they tap into people's identity instead of the actual things going on, which is people can't afford to like buy homes.
Yeah.
People can't, make sure their kids are going to be safe. People are really, really angry and really, really frustrated. And like, these are the things that we should be talking about, but we can't because like the media ecosystem doesn't
Makes
enable
it.
that.
Yeah, no, it's been, I mean, as someone who's kind of existed in the worst space online for for years, I feel like the discourse, I thought it would get better for some reason. I don't know why I thought it would get better. I feel like it was idealistic of me, or maybe I just never paid attention and it was always this bad. But it feels very much like I think more people, even if they don't see eye to eye on a lot of these things, the average person is really just trying to live their own life and raise their kids, and like you said, pay their bills, maybe have a house, maybe have like feel like their kids are safe wherever it is, whether it's in school or city or whatever environment they're in. And that inability to hold the leaders accountable to those questions feels partially like part of the design too. Always seems more like at the root of all of it, a class thing that's happening in this country.
Yeah.
And it's easier just to divide us all up and have us all at each other's throats than to have us actually looking at all of the fucking representatives who make hundreds of millions of dollars. How are you like,
I
that's the
know.
thing that kills me with that one guy's rant on TikTok. I forget his name, where he was like after Roe v. Wade was overturned, he's like, stop fucking sending me emails, Democrats. Like, and then he starts listing what all of and this is bipartisan, everybody's worth, and it's hundreds of millions.
Million. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes me insane.
Well, it's like what it takes to be a good leader is kind of the opposite of what it takes to get elected. I think you have to be such like a brown noser and have such an ego to like want to be a politician in either party, that it's just, and then their terms are short. So it's like people make all these promises and then they don't deliver. And then
Or their terms are forever.
Or their
and,
terms are
and
forever.
They're 90
and then
years old.
They're 90 years old and they're like they're not even, yeah, yes, that too. And then it just, everybody's just kind of jaded, and then people feel disenfranchised, and then they stop voting, and it's just it is a mess. And then whenever I talk about it, people are like, well, why don't you run for office? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I would never do that.
Yeah. Why would you want that? And that is the thing. The people who should be running for office would never want to. It just is. And then once you get that power, in order to even get there, I don't know how many principles you have to sacrifice along the way.
And with campaign finance, like, it costs so much money to run an effective campaign. And so you're in everybody's pockets before you're even in office. Like, that's a whole, I mean, there's so many issues that like we could just like, but like the Citizens United ruling was like a death knell in our democracy. If that's even, it's death. I've never said that.
Death knell. I think that's correct.
It just was like, it killed our democratic process. There's this really good book called Dark Money by Jane Mayer, who's a New Yorker writer. I listened to it. I didn't read it. I listened to it on Audible, and it was great. And it was really disturbing about just like how dark money has hurt democracy.
Do you feel like there's a difference between listening to and reading? Is that why you made that distinction?
Yeah, because I'm trying to be more relatable, I don't read, you guys. I don't have time. But when you listen, you can like do other things at the same time.
Yeah. So my husband is kind of a snob about, I was only laughing because my husband's a very big snob about people who are like, I read all these books, and he's like, did you, or did you listen to them?
I listen. When I read a book, I'll tell you I read a book. I did read this one book by Maggie Smith. It was like this divorce memoir that just came out. And I felt so bad because my husband, I'm like in bed, and I'm like, this isn't about you. I'm just, she's like talking about her divorce. And I'm like, I'm just,
Yeah, the situation, it's weird to be like, I don't know, when comedy all just became political. I want to go back to like the Jerry Seinfeld days where you're like,
do
what's
you?
the deal?
Where Bill Cosby was like revered?
Well, no, maybe not when Bill Cosby was revered.
Like the rose-colored glasses is a real thing. I feel you too. I'm like, I want to go back to the days where like everybody at the Comedy Cellar was racist and problematic, and nobody said anything because we didn't have social media.
Yeah, it does feel like that was the thing that bothered me. There was always so much camaraderie with the comedians. And I know there's like problematic parts of comedy in the past, but there did always feel like a certain amount of like all comedians were somewhat in it together. And then there was a big, there seemed to be a big rift. You have a chapter about this in your book, kind of, about cancel culture.
I have to talk about cancel culture, but yeah, no, I do. I agree with you. So I had this moment. I'm afraid to say his name because he's such a troll, but it was really like around like the kind of 2016 election when there was all this stuff going on online, and I just kind of felt like everybody was being divided, and it felt like something weird was going on. And I don't even want to get into it, but I did like get some shit from Jimmy Dore about something, and I wrote back. I was like a private message him. I was like, comic to comic, like what? Why are you? You know, because some guy I did a show in London, and I was like, it was a work in progress show, and I was talking about the 2016 election, and there were a lot of people online who, I'll say the term Bernie bro, which, sorry, that might be problematic. A lot of Bernie supporters, and I appreciate Bernie's message too, but I just saw so much hate with like the Bernie versus the Hillary camp. And I was like, you guys, like, this is gonna fuck us. You know what I mean? There's like Trump, which like I would like for him to not be president. Can we all just get along or whatever? And I got so much shit for that. And then I did a show in London where I was like working it out, and I was talking about this stuff on stage, and some guy in the audience was heckling me about Bernie. And I went online after, and I thought it was kind of funny that it was like a Bernie supporter in London, that like our politics was so global because of social media, that some guy who doesn't even like live in the country where this politician is running comes to my show and is heckling me. And I tweeted something about that, and then it went viral, and Jimmy weighed in, and then people really came after me, and they were like saying that the show didn't even happen, like that I'm making this up. It was crazy. And now I know that it probably was amplified by like trolls and bots and also people. But then Jimmy weighed in and was like, God, and I just remember him being a comic. I didn't know at that time that he was making so much money being the person that he has become today. And so that was my like wake up call of like, this is a totally different landscape. People are making a lot of money having really strong political opinions. That's my baby in the background.
And he's got strong political opinions.
And he is strong. He's like, you're not fucking funny.
He's heckling you.
He's heckling me. And like it's hard to talk about this because I know how I come across to people. Like I feel like as like a woman on the internet with like a kind of progressive or leftist bent, even though I was a woman with the right, I mean, like we're targets no matter what. But that was my wake up call that like we're in a new territory where it's not comics again. You know, there's not the camaraderie, because also people are making a lot of money amplifying the divisiveness and feeding into like the political apparatus that is trying to divide us.
Yeah, my only thing is like the Daily Show and places we're making a lot of money off this too. So
yeah, is
just that there's more diversity in the ecosystem now that we can see there are more people making money off of it, and it's not just, you know, the Viacom.
Yeah, no, that is a totally fair thing. I think that, so I worked for the Daily Show. I like to believe that I know for a fact that we like rigorously fact check. We were trying to go after the powers that be. Like my favorite example is I did a piece on McDonald's factory farming things, and like McDonald's was a sponsor of the Daily Show, and we went after our sponsor, and we were allowed to because nobody told John what to do. It like came from John.
Mm-hmm.
And that did make money for Viacom, but it wasn't like I mean, I remember, I don't know if you know the show Redacted Tonight.
Oh, Lee Camp
show. So
yeah. Didn't it get like completely, I had him on, he talked about how it was like completely freaking deleted from YouTube.
I don't know what happened with it, but I remember that my friend, when the show was starting, was like, do you want to work on the show? Because I was on the Daily Show, and it was around the time where my colleagues interviewed Edward Snowden, who was in Russia, and this was like maybe 2014 or something. And he's like, you have full creative freedom. You can make fun of the US. You can make fun of anything you want. It's on RT. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh, RT, that's like Russia Today, owned by the Kremlin. Can you make fun of Putin? And he's like, no. So he
Oh,
said
wow.
that to me. So it was like kind of interesting that they had like a political show that was like more like you can say more than you can. Like there's this mythology from people who didn't work at the Daily Show that like we were censored in any way. We really weren't. We just tried to. It was like this weird thing where you're like doing journalism, but you're doing comedy. But and I want to get back to like your point about like the left versus the right, and that I do think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I do think that there is like a little more from the right leaning uh, podcasters. I feel like there might be a little more disingenuousness in the process of making the stuff than from my personal experience working on that show. It wasn't like, we covered fracking, we covered when I got there, John was like, talk about whatever you want, we'll find a way to make it funny. Like it wasn't about the culture. We weren't trying to fuel culture wars or divide. It was really just like trying to hold people in power to account and like
Yeah.
looking at like, the bullshit. John would always talk about like the bullshit mountain of like Fox News, and like we're seeing it now with like everything going on, like looking at like Tucker Carlson's text of like what he actually believed versus what he said on television. Like, so that's like what I mean. I don't think it's like both. I don't want to both sides it, because I do feel like we were beholden to facts and we really tried to work in that lane.
Yeah. I loved that show back when it was Jon Stewart. Like it was just so, I think, probably more influential on me than I realized. But I also think the kind of thing that I've seen in my just even inbox is this disillusionment with a lot of this stuff that was supposed to be rigorously fact checked. The example that comes to mind just pops into my head is this mostly peaceful protest kind of idea where someone's standing in front of a protest and they're saying it's mostly peaceful, whether that imaging was just bad or whatever, not even caring about how that looked, that people feel like the same distrust that they felt maybe for the right. Like people from the left maybe have started to feel some of this. So that's
What do
what
you
I've seen, where they feel like that they're not being honest either. Like the brokers at CNN aren't necessarily honest brokers either.
CNN is not the left anymore. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Trump town hall, but like look who I mean, it wasn't even that they let Trump speak. It was like the
It's like
people.
a rally.
It was a rally. It was like, who did they I was curious as to like,
You need the money.
yeah. But it's like, who was in that audience? Like, how did they select the audience?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I want to know. I have no judgment. I just want to know who was in that audience.
Yeah, um it's been interesting because I was fully kind of the left, and I think my experience hasn't, I don't know that I really knew what I believed. So I
Well,
think
also, even like of the left versus of the right, like that's part of the problem, because I do think it's like we're putting people in boxes. And I think it's like so somebody who's right leaning or whatever you want to call it listens and they see me as a left leaning person, they will tune out, or vice versa.
oh yeah, I
And
get
that,
it on the right.
but it's like that thing of like, if we
And
just,
the left.
if we try to like stop talking about it in these ways, like the whole trans, like, the Bud Light stuff, it's like, are you really mad? I mean, are you really mad at somebody who's just trying to live their life? And if you are, like, let's break that down. Why does a Bud Light ad with a trans woman upset you? What is it? What deep down is it? It can't just be this one person trying to live their life. Like,
Yeah, but
what is it?
I think in that instance it feels like someone's making a mockery of what it's like to be a woman. Like there's an almost cartoonish aspect to, it's like a performative, what like someone would think, it's based in so many actually kind of fucked up stereotypes of what it would be like to be a woman. And that from what I can tell and what I've observed, that seems to be this kind of visceral reaction that I hear from women. And
turfy women, you mean?
I
Or
mean,
like,
I get called a TERF all the time, and
okay. Do you
maybe
so
I
do you have any trans female friends?
yeah,
And
definitely.
so like, do you talk to them about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, but I don't think they're as engaged in the culture war as
They're just trying to live their lives.
right.
So who is engaged in the culture war, and why is there a culture war around people just trying to live their lives?
Well,
There might
some
not be
of
an
them would
answer to
see
that
this
too.
as yeah, agreed, but they would say some of this activism is actually hurting their ability to just try and live their lives because it
The
feels
trans women would say that the active that the so
some trans women that I'm friends with.
as a non-trans woman, or are you like, so I mean, it's even that is like, so what you're saying is trans women you are friends with are upset about the Bud Light ad with the trans woman in it because they think that it's problematic or something.
Well, no, they don't think it's problematic. It's that all of the what feels like this forceful kind of propaganda or whatever it is
They said
everywhere.
your trans friends have said this to you.
I have had yes, I have trans female friends who feel like a lot of this activism is hurting their ability to just live their lives. Like they feel as if they just were fine and wanted to live, and now because there's so much of
Is it because of the ad, or because people using the ad to like amplify anger towards trans people or amplify this culture war? Because if we can make it about trans kids in schools, then we don't have to talk about guns in schools, right? Like if we can take everybody's focus here, we can like, divide and not talk about the real issues. And the real issues are not somebody who identifies as a girl using a bathroom where they're going to be less likely to get hurt. The real issues are kids physically dying and getting shot in schools. Like gun deaths are like now like the leading cause of death among kids in America. But it's easier
yeah,
for us to talk about a Bud Light ad than to
right.
talk about like how do we make these places actually safer for people.
But do you feel like in some of the instances that TERFs get called TERFs for example, men just self-IDing into prisons in or trans women self-IDing into female prisons, and do you feel like that is okay?
I think that we can like always like cherry pick things about like anything, but I think what it comes down to is like nobody, like it is not easier to be trans
Yeah.
than to not be trans. And so people who and also you look at like kids who identify as trans and their like suicide rates, it's really sad and scary. And it's just like, this is a vulnerable population. And I just want to be sensitive to people who so much want to express themselves in a certain way that if they are deprived of that, they will resort to suicide. Like this is just a really vulnerable population that I just want to support. I don't have any other views about it than I want people who are nonviolent to be able to live their lives in peace.
Yeah.
And I want to support them in any way that I can.
Yeah. I think most people feel that way, although they draw the line at like kids. I think when you start talking about surgeries with minors and stuff like that, then people get very upset.
But it's also like the same people who are fine about like everybody having like assault rifles. Like I don't necessarily buy it. Like I believe people get upset, but I don't fully buy it, because if you gave a shit about kids, you would regulate assault rifles. There is enough data. If you just look at the data to show what's really going on, like we could actually work together and like make kids safe. That's how I personally feel. but that said, like, it's also a case by case basis. Like, I mean, I think let parent like let I would love to like let the data and the science lead. You know, like if I can't personally weigh in on like kids having surgeries because I haven't been in that situation myself. But if it's like if the rates are higher for kids who like self harm if they don't get the surgery, like let's look at the data and like let's talk
Yeah.
to the experts. Like I'm not an expert in this territory. I also understand how easy it is to like hear a talking point of like, oh my god, a kid is getting a gender like reversal surgery and they don't. I don't even know if that's called that. I'm really not. But like I can see how like people who are not in the weeds of it could have really strong points of view because it sounds crazy. Just like pro life sounds like you're killing babies when you're not. You know, that's a whole separate issue. But like that term should fucking die because they're not pro life. You know, these laws are actually like making it harder for women who want to have pregnancies and if they have a complication get medical care. Like
Yeah, I just read this like first person account from this woman, I think from Dallas, which was like horrific about
having
I
sepsis
get
and like
emotional. Yeah, I think
having
that
to carry a dead fetus to term because your hospital has these like retrograde policies that
yeah.
are making it harder for you to have a future kid or for you to even survive. Like that's like, I mean, that issue, abortion is like the perfect kind of like microcosm around like what's like wrong with like our culture wars. When you look at the data that most people want people to be able to have, you know, healthy experiences, safe experiences in hospitals to make their own medical decisions. Most people are in agreement, but with the culture war on that specific issue, and that is by design. Like Jerry Falwell and like the right leaning moral majority in the 1970s looked at abortion and they were like, this is a really good divisive issue that we can actually like get these religious people on our side so we can have like a stronger presence in Washington and have more political power and do what we want to do. And it actually stemmed, it's a whole long story, but it actually stemmed from them wanting to get tax breaks for their private white Christian schools and not wanting to diversify their white schools. And so they needed more political power so that they could like put Carter's administration wanted them to have was basically like, if you don't diversify your schools, you can't get tax breaks. And so they were like, fuck that, we need more political power so we can rewrite the rules. But like, we can't run on racism, so we're going to run on abortion. We're going to make this a wedge issue so that we can get these people on our side because like, who wouldn't be pro-life? So it literally came out of that. And
Wow.
now we're in this current moment where it's like,
I've
like,
never even heard about that. That's crazy.
yeah, I made it
Yeah.
up. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm really good at improv. Have you read my book?
I'm really good at improv. Have you read my book? But like, yeah. Oh, also, yeah, no one has a late term abortion because they want to. No one's aborting. No, you having been pregnant and a mom, like, if you have to get an abortion at like 8 months, it is like the worst decision to have that decision that you have to make with your partner and your doctor. And then the added stress of an entire, like, you know, political ecosystem shaming you and causing you more trauma. It's just like, it's the meanest thing in the world. So, you know, and the way that we get over these humps actually, and data has proven this in countries where abortion went from like illegal to legal, is just by sharing stories and like connecting to people.
Yeah.
And
but even like in most of Europe, it's like 12 weeks, right? Because I think that's where most people.
But it's not about the week.
Like drops precipitously the support
it can't,
for
the conversation can't be about the weeks because if the conversation's about the weeks, then we've lost because it's not about people. It's not it can't be about the weeks. It has to be about.
Right. I'm just saying, isn't that what the laws are in
I don't
a lot
know
of
the
Europe?
laws in different in different countries.
Oh, okay. I thought that in Germany, I know my cousin's German. I think that I'm not sure what it is in Germany. I thought in most of Europe, it was 12 weeks. And I was reading this whole study, which was interesting to me. And I don't know how true this polling is because it's a poll. So who fucking knows? But it was basically saying, it was like showing the support for abortion as the terms went on. And so most people agree, like you said, most people agree people should have the decision to abort or not abort their child up to 12 weeks. And then after 12 weeks, as it goes on, the support kind of drops precipitously.
That all makes perfect sense. The thing is, if you get
I don't
into
know if
the
it's an
no,
actual.
if you get in, yeah, but if you get into the weeks, like we've already lost. Like the thing is, it's like you have to. If you get into the weeks, then somebody in the situation that we've seen happening, if somebody has like a life-threatening condition at 30 weeks, if we're talking about weeks, then that person is still fucked and they don't get health care. So it has to be
Right.
about like just first of all, also the same people who are quote unquote pro-life are like not pro-sex education. They're trying to like outlaw contraception. They're like, so they're doing all these things that are, it's not about the fucking fetus. And that, because if it also was about the fetus, then we'd also want like people who are pregnant to have health care. It's not about the fucking fetus to them. To them, it's really just about control. As somebody who had a baby that I wanted, I didn't realize how incredibly subjugating
Yeah,
motherhood is. And
it
so for
is.
these people to say that they are like pro-life, but then they're not giving women paid leave, they're not giving the fetuses healthcare in the womb. They just want to control us because like at the end of the day, if I were like a fascist, whatever, like all I would want is for people to like men and women, like if you have more kids, you have to have more jobs like to feed those kids, like it is a way for social control, a very effective way for social control. So that's really what it's about. When we get into like the number of weeks, then we've lost, because we, meaning I don't know your politics on abortion, but it's not about the weeks. It's about trusting people to make sound medical decisions, or at least trusting their doctors, as opposed to random politicians who actually don't believe what they say.
Yeah, I wonder in Europe, like how that plays out, where these places where it is 12 weeks, if it's a medical emergency, if there's exceptions to that.
I am, without looking, which neither of us have, so we have to also caveat that we're talking out of our asses. I am sure, and I actually don't fucking know, but
I'm sure
like
there's like
I,
a
I hope that
exception.
people are not like bleeding out from a fucking miscarriage or stillbirth in a parking lot because their hospital has these like retrograde political policies that have nothing to do with maternal fetal health.
Yeah, it was interesting being pregnant and just seeing how, because I was like you, I didn't really want to have a kid or not want to have a kid. I just never really thought I would. And then I had her at 43, I think I
Well,
was.
cool. Teen mom.
Yeah, geriatrics. And that was just a wild and shocking experience. And I always used to joke like the only reason that I was like, the only reason I want a kid is super dumb, because I just wanted all of my periods to be worthwhile. I was like, all of this bullshit I went through for nothing. I feel like there there should be something at the end of this, which feels like a very selfish reason to have a kid. And then I kind of just gave up on it because they said I was in menopause, and then I got naturally pregnant with her. So it was like a crazy long story that I won't bore you with, but it was wild. And now I have this child, but it is it's been weird. When you say I don't know what your politics are on abortion, I'm like, I don't know if I know what they are, because the 6-week ban came down in Texas, the heartbeat ban, when I saw her heartbeat at 6 weeks. It was like the same fucking day I went into the thing, and it was weird. I was like, I don't know how to process either one of these things at the moment. And I think I became not squishy about it. I just, because actually having a baby and seeing how dangerous and how much it takes over your entire body and life and how helpless you are has also made me even more pro-choice in a lot of ways.
Well, because you
It's
just
like a
like
weird
so many
mind
things
fuck.
that can go wrong. And I
Yeah.
also think the conversation can't be fetus versus woman or womb, whatever they want to call us. It's maternal fetal health. It's the fetus and the person and the host womb. We're all one. And it's like,
We are all one.
we
Even
all
when
are
they're
one.
out, they're one.
And when we're out, so if you actually give a shit about maternal fetal health and like have sex education, make sure that people who don't want kids or who are mentally unhealthy, like make sure that people aren't in that situation that they don't want to be in because they have access to information. Make sure that like people during their pregnancy are less stressed by just having a little bit of like more of a social safety net or just access to healthcare.
Yeah.
Like these are very basic things. And I think that if we let like people in power with disingenuous motivations define the conversation, that's where we're screwed. But what they're finding with the data is like if you actually have conversations with people who are, the majority of Americans do exist in that gray area. If the conversation isn't 12 weeks versus 13 weeks, if the conversation is, here's my personal story. I had a child that I wanted, and the child ended up, we found out it was non-viable at 16 weeks, and it would have been a danger to my life if I kept, it's people actually sharing their stories. And there's like a joke about how like, if we like, I try to make it a joke, it's not that funny, but like the way to get like men to like come on board, it's like, like the daughter that your mistress will be forced to have, maybe someday she'll need an abortion too. It's like getting men to like frame it like it's about me, or like your son could be in a situation where he could get like, but jokes aside, just tap into like the experiences that we're seeing. We're seeing what happens when you ban abortion at 6 weeks. We're literally seeing women dying or almost dying because hospitals are afraid to provide healthcare. This is a world that I think the majority of us don't want to live in.
Or they're just straight up leaving those states, which leaves people in even worse.
But the vulnerable people can't leave the states. Like, that's the thing. It's like,
no, I mean, healthcare providers are leaving the states.
Healthcare providers are leaving the states.
And like rural populations, they're already so fucked in terms of the healthcare that they have access to. And now if you have healthcare providers just saying it's not worth it for me, I can't do my job as I feel I can do it, I'm leaving the state, then it hurts people even more, because now you just don't have enough OBGYNs, or you don't have enough doctors to even be able to help the people who might even want a pregnancy. It's just like a weird cascading effect too, that I think we won't really see the full ramifications of. Yeah, it's like it's such a weird time, and your book comes out at this time that's so it's all of these essays that are personal, but it's also a lot of social commentary. What was your process for writing it, and how did you kind of decide to do this project?
It happened at a time when there was like a global pandemic, so it was easy to have more focus. It's really hard to focus and write books. I remember, there are a lot of female comedian memoirs, and so many of them are really great. And I remember reading Bossy Pants, and when Tina Fey talked about her experience with Lorne Michaels and working in that environment, I love that. I love hearing about the work more so than like childhood experiences. And so as I was writing this, I kind of started writing essays. My first essay, not to talk about abortion, was like the dead baby joke chapter, because I'm like, why am I the way I am? Why is my comedy the way it is? And I just remember as a kid, I loved dead baby jokes. And they're all shock value. They're dark. They're just like these things you shouldn't laugh at. But they're also weirdly progressive because they're like equal opportunity offenders. Like I grew up in a town where I was like the only Jewish kid, and my friends would tell like racist jokes, and I always felt bad about it. So then I would be like, well, here's a dead baby joke. Every culture has babies. And then I'm like, also there's something about these jokes where it's like they're so formulaic. It's literally just like a setup, and then the punchline is just like all shock value, that it actually teaches you kind of how to be a comedian. So they were like training wheels of like jokes. And so I don't know, I wrote that chapter, and then I just kind of started, I was like, a lot of times, like I would have these conversations with my mom where we'd be like walking and talking, and she'd be like, remember when that happened? Remember when that happened? So her DNA really is very much in the book. And but yeah, I just it kind of, I thought that the stories about my experience, my personal experiences, if I could have like universal themes attached to them, that maybe it would like resonate. And I don't want to be like a political pundit. I don't know if I'm going to
Yeah.
get shit from some of the things I say on this podcast by your supporters. I hope they're still listening. But I just wanted to, like, I talk about cancel culture because it was like hard at the time to write a book about comedy and culture without talking about that kind of weird elephant in the room. And I think like being able to talk about it in more than 140 characters with, like, anecdotes from my own personal experiences, writing on Roseanne, just being in comedy, which is like this weird thing people care about. I think it was like, it was cool to take time to really think about, what do I think about this thing called, everyone's calling cancel
Yeah.
culture, and how do I fit into it? And it was, so it was cool to have the space to write about something like that. But yeah, I mean, I hope that somebody who doesn't align with me politically will still appreciate what I'm saying in the book, because it just really is my own experiences. It's not, I don't have like a larger agenda other than, well, I got paid to write a book and it's 60,000 words and I got to make that happen and get it in on time and hopefully
You're a
share
great
my
writer.
insights.
And I do think too, your book really has so many, for me, just as someone who's walked a very similar path, actually, we have a lot in common. It's just funny. There's just so much that we've shared in terms of like the struggle in this industry. I think that so many people who are in this industry, and your story to me just showed me how resilient and kind of determined you are, because in all of your stories there's so much grit and you just keep trying. Even in that story of your your American girls, the American refugees story, and you're so open, and you are a great writer. And I will say, I had 2 copies of your book laying around because they just like got them to me very quickly. I was like, "Hey, where's the book?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll get it to you." And so I had 2 copies, and I have a very conservative uncle who was around and read it, just like binge read it. And he was like, "Hey, look, I don't agree with a lot of this. There's a lot of things that I would take to task, but she's a great writer." And he read it and liked it. He was like, "She's."
Aw.
So I do think, to your point, it like he said, there's a lot of universal themes, and there's things that he was like, I like her. I think there's a lot of things that I would not agree with, but I like what she's saying, and I like the story she's telling, because there's a lot of just, it's your own experience.
All I want is to be likable. You reminded me of something, because I do want to get back to, I want to like just quickly say one thing about the Daily Show that has resonated with me. I was working on a piece in Florida with Jordan Klepper as a correspondent about guns. It was about how the state of Florida actually at the time, and this got repealed, but they had gag orders on physicians. Physicians were not allowed to talk about gun safety with, pediatricians were not allowed to talk about, we're not allowed to ask parents if they had guns, to advise parents on how to store guns for safety. The gun lobby got this gag order in effect. We kind of made fun of it. We talked to this guy, Noel Flasterstein, who was a Second Amendment attorney who had like a whole arsenal or like stockpile of weapons. And while we were with Noel Flasterstein, I don't know why I'm plugging this guy. He was nice, but nice. John announced that he was leaving the Daily Show. And this guy whose politics are completely different from John was like, man, I'm sad to see him go. And to me, that was like, I do feel like John, yes, it was like the Daily Show, but at the time that show existed, John's version of it, it was before we had such a fractured media landscape, a little bit. It was like before like the kind of the 2016 election. And it was cool to me that, and John, is bipartisan in a way. I mean, look what he's doing for veteran. I mean, like he's able to transcend politics in a way that I found really admirable and really effective. And I just didn't think I would ever be able to do that, partly because I'm a woman. And I think being a woman in the public sphere is inherently political, for better or for worse. But the fact that your uncle read that book, and I do think in a book, in a format that is like so long, like I mean, too bad we don't read and books are being burned, yada, yada. But like, I do think there is power in like literature and in something like that where you can really gain a perspective. It's not 140 characters. It's not like
Yeah. talking
2-minute
point.
bit on late night, or,
Yeah.
it's like, and podcasts are the same way.
Yeah.
So, that makes me really happy that your uncle wasn't like burn the witch.
No, it was really cute. He was just like, he's like, you guys have a lot in common, and just saw it. He's like, you both wrote, and it was very cute and endearing.
You both
And
were sexually harassed many times
you
in
both
comedy
been
clubs.
sexually harassed multiple times. It's hard to write a book though. It's just it's something I can't. It's like my Everest. So I'm so impressed by anyone who it takes discipline. It takes, I think, anything where you're writing about yourself and you're being vulnerable is challenging. And I just am impressed that you did it and put it out there. I hope it's doing well. And even if my audience doesn't agree with you, I've had so many people. The point of this podcast, Walk-ins Welcome, is that literally anyone can come sit down and talk to me about whatever. And my audience expects that. They don't expect to agree with every single person. There have been people who are super far left who have come on, and my audience, I think, is very like probably libertarian, center right, but also Bernie bros. Like it's very an anarchist. It's very strange. It's a very strange.
That totally tracks to me. That is not remotely strange. That fully tracks. And all those people see me as like a neoliberal, Hillary shill, globalist, whatever.
They see that they see me as that sometimes too, depending. They still appreciate the perspectives. I think that that's what
I'll screenshot the tweets I get. I really appreciate the perspective.
They'll be like, I really appreciate her perspective. This neoliberal, whatever you call yourself.
I don't call myself that. It was just parroting some shit I've gotten online.
Yeah, my audience is wild. I hope they're nice. I hope that they're respectful and nice. That is my biggest.
I do think, I mean, I've seen for the most part people getting they seem to be a little more chill in the spaces I've been online. I think around like the Gamergatey time, it was more lawless and crazy. I think I don't want to say that the internet has gotten more civil, but I do from my own vantage point. Maybe it's because I've turned off certain settings.
You're like, filters are just so high. You turn off the filters.
I've turned off the comments.
You're like, oh, never mind. I didn't realize that I was still getting completely pummeled. What is your biggest defect of character?
My biggest defect? Well, it's not a defect of character, but I'm a really bad driver and I live in LA and it makes it really hard. That's not a defect of character. I don't know. How would you answer that?
Fuck, I don't even know where I would begin. Spite is a big one. I can like hang on to perceived, either true or perceived slights for an eternity. I'm very
interesting.
Like there's like an Italian mafia that awakens in my heart and is like, you're dead to me now, and I won't let go of it.
I guess mine would be
probably my worst one.
Yeah, I probably have like an undiagnosed anxiety disorder, and so I probably have like cyclical negative thoughts that make it hard for me to as John one time told me, I don't let your neuroses block you. I'm probably neurotic, and that probably makes it hard for me to get into like a kind of more meditative flow state.
Interesting. And what is your biggest asset?
My tits. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even know.
I love that. Like you're just as a joke, your kind of gut reactions to your best and worst qualities. Where I'm a bad driver and I have nice tits.
Like so, like old timey female stereotypes.
Amazing.
Yeah, you've heard it here first. I don't know. I guess I do think I would like to believe that I'm pretty resilient.
I think you are, based on what I've read. And
come at me, bros.
Come at me, bros. No, don't come at her. And okay, yeah, that's how I end every podcast, is just wondering what people like and hate about themselves. or working on, and
That's healthy.
I try to end on a positive note with the asset.
What do you hate about yourself? Let's get a pen and circle the part on your body.
I actually think you and I should pivot to doing mommy content together.
Yeah, we'll make more money. I will do that with you. Get Joe Rogan to sponsor it.
We will pivot to doing reviews of products because I've got opinions now.
I have opinions now too.
And the Kikaroo and the
What is that?
It's the little peanut that you change them on, but man, that thing was amazing.
Oh, I'll show a product. Oh, there are these, I don't even know the name of them, but there are these like pacifiers that actually stay in his mouth.
Oh, really? She fucking hates pacifiers. Has since the day she was born.
Oh, you know what? Here's a product I will show. They're called silverettes. Do you know what they are?
No.
They're like these little silver cups for when you're breastfeeding. They're made out of pure silver so that it just naturally has anti-inflammatory properties. I didn't fuck with any of the ointments. The ointments just create, like, they stain your clothes, they make a mess. But you just put these like little silver cups in and you can wash them. They're like, maybe they're like $50 online, but you have them for as long as you're breastfeeding, and they just like make the pain go away when you're not physically breastfeeding. And I tell everyone I know to, like, if you plan on breastfeeding, take them to the hospital with you, because these things are like, they're just really helpful. And I didn't know any of that.
Wow. That's so cool. I didn't know any of that either. And I'm still breastfeeding.
Yeah. Well, you're not in pain anymore, but it's really for the first 2 months, which are like so painful.
No, I had no idea.
I had no idea. And my husband, I was like, imagine if like a baby is just chewing on your balls for 24 hours a day, just chewing, like gnawing at your balls all day long. Sorry, that might be appropriate, but that's what it felt like.
Where can we find you and your book? You're like, don't find me. Never. I don't want your audience.
I'm not doing a ton of stand-up right now, but I am. I'm on TikTok and on social media.
You're banned in Montana.
I'm banned in Montana. The TikTok kids are cool. I actually didn't think they would be, but I don't even really post. I just throw up old content that I've already done. And they seem
cool.
to be into it. Yeah.
And so you're on TikTok is at Jena Friedman?
Yeah, all the socials. And then I'm doing a show in Chicago, I think in September.
Okay. And where do we find your book? Anywhere that books are available?
Anywhere that books are available.
It's been a joy getting to know you. I love you. I love your stand-up.
Oh, thank you.
And I wish I had met you in LA, but if you're ever in Austin headlining at the Mothership.
I'm excited. I can't wait to do that. I'll be there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to South by a couple times.
Yeah. Let me know when you're in town.
Absolutely. Really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for plugging the book and our spirited conversation.
Yeah, it was great.
Awesome.
Thank you. It's time for the weekly check-in with Bridget and cousin Maggie.
Man, I have to say, going in yesterday and switching on the lights to shoot that little thing we shot to promote Dumpster Fire coming up, and then turning the lights off, and it took about 10 minutes. I was like, this is the dream. It was literally like I was switching off the lights and I was like, this is what we were talking about and dreaming about for years.
No, it's true. It's going to be great. It's going to take me getting used to, because it's not in a rickety old garage. And yeah, it doesn't have like an echo, and there isn't birds and dogs and
planes and sirens and helicopters.
I mean, don't fear, because they're about to break ground on a house next door like any minute. So Dumpster Fire will have plenty of
background noise, and there are still dogs. We'll still have the dog noises, and there's at some babies.
But yeah, it's nice. It'll be nice it's nice to just be able to just get to shooting.
Did we tell the story about trying to get someone to come in and light the set?
We were trying to get someone to come in and light the set. And I had made a connection with somebody in our kind of neighborhood through like a Facebook page. And he seemed like totally down for it, and he seemed to know what my content was, or at least he went and looked and was like, oh, it looks like you're building a nice like YouTube channel. And I'm like, well, incrementally slow, glacial speeds.
But this is over the course of a couple weeks. Like, she was in touch with this guy, and then they couldn't find a time, and then he seemed to disappear, and then
he didn't seem to disappear. I was like, hey, he's like, how is setup coming? And we had done that like initial setup.
But wait, because then she was in touch with someone else, and this is one night Bridget's sitting there being like, why do all these lighting people disappear on me?
And then I was like, I've been sending them a picture of the set. Maybe that's why. And then I showed Maggie the picture, and she's like, you fucking moron. Why are you sending that picture?
You're sending this to people, and it's just like this jank. You know what our set looks like, but
we'll post it with this. Check-in.
Karen's off to the side. She has no clothes on because we hadn't had a chance to dress her.
I'm sure that dude's wife was like, what the fuck?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we'll post the picture in the community so you can see. I laughed for like 20 minutes. I was like, what are you doing?
I need to learn how to make memes. You know that meme that's going around, and it's like the cut from, I don't even know what movie it is. It's the actor in Home Alone. What's his name?
Macaulay Culkin.
No. One of the criminals.
Joe Pesci,
where he's like, what the fuck is this piece of shit? And it's like they put it in front of everything now. Like, it's the one that I showed you of like when someone from Target goes to Walmart.
Yeah.
Like, when Bridget sends anyone a picture of the dumpster fire set, they're like, what the fuck is this piece of shit? I don't want anything to do with it.
And Bridget had a friend in town who's like, like a professional in the industry. And they were like, oh no, you never send them a picture of your set. Like, what are you doing? I was like, this is the picture you've been sending? No wonder people have been ghosting you.
I had to reach out to the second guy. I was like, it's come to my attention that perhaps you wouldn't want to be associated with such a janky production, but I swear we have advertisers for now.
Yeah. And so he did eventually come, and we were laughing just about the jankiness of our setup. And there's the cardboard cutout of Elon. And he was like, what's this for? And we were like, oh, that's Bridget's nemesis.
It's all so dumb. It's as dumb as our culture is.
Mm-hmm.
It is the show the culture deserves.
It really is.
Yeah. So it's been fun. It's taken a little bit longer because I wasn't feeling well, but also just finding somebody. I mean, it'll be 6 weeks this weekend that we've been here. And I'm like, why aren't we up and running like operationally? Yeah.
And we've got to figure out our strategy now for our shooting space. We need to sorry, loyal fans of Dumpster Fire, but the set is going to change. The background's going to change. We're not sure quite yet what we're going to do with it, but we've got to put a strategy in place so that we can shoot multiple things in one spot.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. So things will be evolving.
Yeah, but at least we're up and going again. It's been nice to be working. I loved it. I know a lot of our listeners will probably have, and even Jena says it. She's like, your audience is going to hate me and they're going to call me this like liberal, blah, blah, blah. But I'm always just so grateful that people like Jena are willing to even come on the podcast and talk to me. And I think at the beginning when she's talking about her mother, I don't want us to lose the real human elements of one another and be tricked into thinking everybody is our enemy, because I personally, it's strange. Like, she's really one of those comedians I just always looked up to. Just whether or not I agreed with her, she's a great writer and comedian.
Yeah.
She's good at her craft.
No, I really enjoy the diversity of opinions that you get on the podcast, and, people from different backgrounds and different walks of life. Cause I do think you're trying to show us our own humanity in a way where we all have stories and struggles we overcome. And yeah, you might not, a lot of our audience doesn't agree with a lot of what people say, but that's why I like our audience, because I think they're open-minded enough to listen.
Well, one of the things that I just got done recording a podcast with Jacob Siegel right before we started recording this check-in. And the thing that struck me the most about his piece, and what I don't want to do to my audience, and what I see a lot of these media outlets doing by sake of siloing their audience and who they present to their audience, is not trusting them to make up their own mind about things. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I've learned really from observing Rogan. He just lets people talk and allows his audience to form their opinions.
Right.
And he pushes back when he wants to push back, not because he feels like he should or he has to, but when he's like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that?
Right.
And really just lets his trust that his audience knows their own mind. What Jacob was saying in this piece and on the podcast, which everybody should listen to and read that piece. It's called A Guide to Understanding the Hoax of the Century by Jacob Siegel on Tablet. It is brilliant. He's just a brilliant mind and a brilliant writer. And he was saying the thing that this technocracy, I can't even talk anymore. He was saying that they don't trust people to make up their own mind. One of the things that they are attacking is it's like cognitive warfare.
Wow.
And cognitive disinformation, which is essentially people don't know how to make up their own minds and can't be trusted to.
Wow.
And that's why I love having such a diverse array of guests. And it's funny, they'll often talk shit about other guests we've had on the
Yeah.
And I see this on Rogan too, where it's, you're having a diversity of thought when people are kind of throwing other people that I've had on the podcast under the bus.
It's good to listen to people you disagree with.
It is.
It helps, formulate your own reasoning for why you disagree with them. But it's also just, you might learn something new, or you might hear something you needed to hear.
Or more importantly, you can still understand that this is a human, even if you might disagree on things, who has, we all lose a parent. We all go through tragedies. And I feel like that's what gets lost when and this is something Jacob was saying today, we've been tricked into dehumanizing our fellow Americans by this state and corporate apparatus.
Right.
And that's what makes him furious. He's like, the thing that enrages me the most is that people have been tricked into hating one another. And I don't want to be tricked into that, because people are so fired up in their own self-righteousness.
Yeah.
It's so gross. But yeah, I was like, how do we get out of this? And he said, you have to go through it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's a way through it. It's pretty disheartening. Well,
I think the way through it, the only thing you can do is continue doing what you're doing, which is talking to different people and putting it out there. You're trying to combat it in your own tiny little slice of the internet. That's all we can do.
They're going to make sure it stays tiny.
Oh, yeah. Forever. For the rest of our lives.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's probably better that way.
No, it's fine. It's fine. As long as I get to do it. And look, we're making a living, enough of a living.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful. We have a core group of supportive people, and it does, even if it incrementally grows, it grows.
Yep.
And I think people have a lot of options of things to listen to.
Absolutely. Any person who takes the time to listen to us, thank you.
Yeah.
That's your time is valuable and precious. We appreciate
and I know there's a lot out there. There's so much that I want to listen to that I don't have time to listen to. So I get it. I'm grateful for any little sliver of attention that I can grab from the people's. Our own family doesn't listen to
I know.
Maybe one or two.
One or two out of 120.
And that's probably for the best as well.
Yes.
Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.